Thank you, Andrew.
We are broadcasting live.
Good morning, everyone. This is the meeting of the Town of Mono Council on Tuesday, March the 11th, 2025. This meeting is being conducted both in chambers and by means of electronic participation as permitted by Section 238, subsection 3.1 of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended and the Town of Mono Procedural Bylaw 2020-42. This meeting can be viewed contemporaneously online or later on our website. I see we have a quorum, and a reminder to our visitors today, the emergency exits are in the rear of the council chamber. Members are free to declare pecuniary interest at this point or at any point in the course of the meeting, and I'll call on Councillor Davey to do the land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mayor. We would like to begin by respectfully acknowledging that the Town of Mono resides within the traditional territories and ancestral lands of the Chinootante, the Attawandaran, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe peoples. We also acknowledge that the Town of Mono resides within the treaty lands named under Treaty 18, the Nottawasaga Purchase of 1818. These traditional territories upon which we live and learn are steeped in rich Indigenous history and traditions. It is with this statement that we declare to honor and respect the past and present connections of Indigenous peoples with this land, its waterways, and resources.
Thank you. I have a motion that Council approves the agenda of session 5-2025 as circulated. Councillor Davey moves, seconded by Councillor Capes. Any issues? Any opposed? Motion is carried. I have a motion that Council approves the minutes of session 4-2025 as circulated. Councillor Davey moves, seconded by Deputy Mayor Nix. Any additions, issues? Seeing none, motion is passed. I don't see that we have any proclamations today, and that brings us to question period.
We have a number of questions this morning, Your Worship, that have been submitted in advance. The first question is, what is the status on Fieldstone subdivision water system, and where are we going to see change? What are we going to do about it?
Well, I'm happy to get the ball rolling on that because I've had a number of exchanges over Facebook on that topic. And I think there's a lot of misinformation going around, unfortunately. And I don't know whether the origin of that information was a real estate sales trailer on the property in early days, but we never, ever suggested that water and wastewater charges would be absorbed into the general tax levy, that they would somehow magically go away when the town assumed responsibility for the wastewater treatment plant. If you look at other municipalities, you will see, as is the experience in Purple Hill and Cardinal Woods, not to mention Orangeville, that the water users pay a separate rate for water. They pay a separate rate for sewage. So I don't know where this developed or how it developed, but there is an impression in that subdivision of 344 homes that as soon as we adopt the plant, which has problems, and we've never made a secret of that, somehow or another the charges will vanish. They will not vanish. And indeed, I'd like to quote from a 2021 letter that was sent to the Fieldstone residents, and it says the following: in summary, the monthly rate includes the cost to operate the plants plus a reserve contribution for future repairs and maintenance or replacement at its end of life. The cost recovery to homeowners to operate the plant will not go away upon town assumption of the works. It is a local service for the 344 homes in Fieldstone subdivision and represents the cost of running the wastewater treatment plant for your subdivision. the idea that somehow these costs would go away is sort of akin to the idea that maybe electrical charges would be absorbed into our residential taxes. It just doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to leave it at that, and if anyone else wants to weigh in on it, they can.
So, thank you, Mayor. I completely agree, I understand. But I guess it's information for the new people who come from other municipalities, where in other municipalities, because I've lived in different ones over the years, some of them you have a water bill, and the water bill comes quarterly or whatever, and everybody pays into the one system. And others, there was no water bill, it just was included. But that's when the entire municipality is supplied by the whole system, and together everybody's paying for it. But when we have 9,000 residents and 344 are serviced by one, then it stands to reason that there would always be paying. But then to clarify for the residents, what is it that they're looking for, or that they should look forward to when the town finally, which I'm assuming will happen eventually, that the town does assume responsibility? So what will change for them then, if anything?
They want two things. They are demanding that we set a date for the completion of the works by the developer and our assumption. And that, of course, we can't do because we don't know when that job is going to get done. Better that the developer pay those costs, which they currently are, than have those costs land on the users in that subdivision. And all they need to do is talk to, the condominium owners, who about a plant that was assumed too soon, too early, and all of a sudden they're being saddled with $16,000 levies to make it work properly. This is what we're trying to avoid with these folks. I grew up in Toronto, and I always remember we had a separate water bill. I think rightly so. And interestingly, Mono was one of the first municipalities in Canada to reward water conservation by having an inverse scale, where the more water you conserve, the better your water rate. And we did that back in the 1990s.
Within these systems? But
within our system, right. Yes. So there's a demand that we take it over immediately, and there doesn't, because I think they feel that somehow or another the charge will go away the minute we take it over.
Right, but that's it. So when we take it over, what changes when we take it over? What changes?
Nothing, Mike?
Nothing really. Yeah, it's you're correct. One thing, Your Worship, to council, just to add to clarify that we're not paying for the residents are not paying for the problems right now. We're paying for operations, and the town of Mono is that operations is set by the rate study. With your annual increases, which council will recall in January they passed a bylaw to extend that rate study to allow us to charge until we complete the new rate study, which is ongoing right now, to the best of our ability. So the expectation is that the rate study that was calculated and completed in 2014 had a 10-year lifespan, and a new rate study will come to council's desk, and that'll set another 10 years of fees for the operation, capital, and maintenance, with reserve contributions for council to approve when council sees that. So what the residents are to expect, Councillor Davey, will be outlined in the newest. The new rate study, which is on its way.
The spring, the summer?
We're set. The water is set for July. The water rate study is also being done right now as well, and that has to be to council before the end of June. And it's expected that the rate study will follow shortly, if not the same meeting, for the Fieldstone system. But it's definitely during the mid to late summer of 2025. Yeah.
So just a word about the so-called rate study. That essentially was a study commissioned to determine how much the plant would cost to operate and how much we should also set aside for future repairs and end-of-life replacement. That went ahead as if this plant was perfect and we were actually running it ourselves from day one. That isn't the case, so we effectively reimburse Brookfield for the operation of the plant. There's a lot of chatter about Brookfield making millions off the town. Well, they don't, because that's what they get to run that plant. But they don't get a dime more than what was expected to be the operational cost of that plant. So we are not paying for the deficiencies. We're paying for the operation of the plant, and we're paying for a reserve, as we have for our other residents insofar as upgrades and so forth are concerned. The other thing that is sort of interesting to me is that the logic that this should somehow be part of the tax base. Were it part of the tax base, I think many of our rural folk would probably come to us and say, well, my septic tank has failed. The municipality is now going to fix it. Or my septic tank needs to be pumped. The municipality is now going to do that as well at their cost. So the logic of it being part of the tax base really isn't there. Have we exhausted this one? Thank you, Fred. Next.
The next question, Your Worship, is do we have any updates on the Black Cat program in Mono and on speeding concerns around the road network?
Okay. The Black Cat technology is basically a box that measures the volume of traffic and the rate of speed. Traditionally, it's not deployed in the winter. It's something that comes out of hibernation, as it were, and goes on to the roads in the spring. The town purchased a number of units for the use of the OPP so that they could determine hot spots within the community where they should be doing their patrols. There was a suggestion that the Black Cat statistics are not available. We actually did publish a lot of Black Cat statistics as part of our community safety task force that Fred and I were on years ago, and I don't see why more recent Black Cat statistics couldn't be made available. As for the issue of speeding, we are still on that issue as recently as our most recent meeting of the Police Services Board. So I have no further updates, no indication that the province has changed its position, but we live in hope.
The next question is with respect to Lloyd Armstrong Parkette. What are the plans for the Parkette at 30 Side Road in Mono, Agila Town Line to be sold? How much of the taxpayers' monies are going to this underserviced, underutilized park?
You go ahead, Ralph.
Thanks, Anthony. There are no plans for selling the park at the moment. We have talked about it on council, and it's probably true that it is underserviced or underutilized, I should say, at this time. The issue of selling land that the town owns is, I think, a very important one and not one to be taken lightly. The amount of land available for the town is not going to increase. It's going to decrease if we sell things and not come back. So our Director of Recreation is not here today, weighed in on the discussion, and if I recall it correctly, She felt that there was, it'd be a mistake to get rid of the property, as that was an asset, and we should maintain it. Although I don't think that we have not done a transition into some other purpose. As you know, there's a ball diamond up there, and there's a shelter, and there's a lot of park space. It has been used for various things in the past. Once I was there for a nighttime viewing of the stars, etc. That's not being used at the moment, but I think other things will come up. So the thought was, let's not get rid of it because we'll never get it back. It would be helpful to our budget, but next year we'll have something else. We've got to sell something else. Well, my personal preference is to hold on to this piece of property. It's an asset, and we don't know exactly what we're going to do, but selling it would give us some money now, and then we'd have to, same problem again next year.
Yeah, good points, Ralph. No, it's not on the, it was never that we were going to sell it, but that we have been looking at how to redevelop it and what to do with it. And during our budget discussions, if you were watching our budget discussions, it came up, and we did limit some of the spending that had been earmarked for it in an effort to bring our tax rate down. So, and I don't know exactly what the numbers are. Do you have them, Les, on the?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Davey. I just pulled it up. We cut $8,000 from the budget. So we're keeping that at a minimal. Like, we have to keep the grass cut. We have to go inspect the area for safety. What also complicates this, it's named Lloyd Armstrong for a reason. It was donated by the Armstrong family. So that complicates selling it as well.
Yeah, and the whole process for selling land has to be started by declaring the land surplus, and there's a public process behind that. And we have not obviously triggered that activity, but we have discussed a number of potential future uses. Councillor Capes, did you want to weigh in on that?
Thank you. I think all the points have been raised. I mean, we made no plans in the budget to do anything different with this park. We lightened the expense for maintenance, and also it is rentable. You can rent it to play ball. You can rent it to use the picnic shelter. So if I recall what Kim was saying, it is still a recreational asset that people can rent from the town. So we did not talk about selling the property, and that's a whole different conversation, as you say. So I'm reluctant to talk about it without the Director of Recreation, and we did not give any instruction to do anything about investigating uses of this park in our 2025 budget, and I think it's probably the least of our concerns at this moment. But thanks for the question.
Thank you. Fred?
Okay, the last question, Your Worship, is the asker would like to opt out of paper flyers that are sent to his mailbox and receive only electronically delivered correspondence from the town. And I do want to remind Council, this question was asked back in the summer as well.
Okay. And the answer back in the summer hasn't changed?
And the answer hasn't changed, Your Worship. The town utilizes unaddressed ad mail for the delivery of flyers such as our newsletter, and the cost of unaddressed ad mail is significantly less than addressed ad mail, in the order of 1/5 or 1/6 the price. The limitation of unaddressed ad mail is it's not addressed, it goes to all households. We don't have the option to not deliver if we use that product. It also means we don't have to physically put an address on these mailings, which we would have to do, so there'd be added cost to that as well.
Right, I think that covers it. That's our last submitted question. Any questions from the gallery today? Oh, if you could come forward, Kirsten, and turn on the mic.
Just to that last question, the recipient of the mail can just opt out of receiving unaddressed mail. if he wants.
But altogether.
Yeah.
Altogether,
That means he
if
won't
they-
get any flyers
if
at
they-
all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if they really don't like it. Okay, good point.
So, Your Worship, just to add to that, so we have electronic billing available online for all residents. I think we're focusing on the newsletter only. But if you choose to go digital with your tax bill, your water bill, those are sent to you by email only. And you do not receive a paper copy.
And that does save us considerable amount of money.
And that would save us, and that's available and explained on our website or contacting the tax collector.
Okay, anything else from the gallery? Is there anyone online who has a question? Val? No, I guess not. Okay. So, under unfinished council business, any questions or comments on the list? Fred?
This isn't on the list, and I'm not sure it has to be, but I would ask the clerk, because I think he needs to hear from council. I would like the fire chief from the Shelburne District Fire Board to be invited to attend a council meeting to give us a talking to, and I know you've had that message before, and I think you wanted, not just me saying this, but does that have to be on this list, or can we just ask you to invite Dave Pratt to come and speak to us?
No, if council's interested in a delegation, then by all means. If that's council's wish, then I will coordinate and organize a delegation for an upcoming meeting.
Then I'd turn to Melinda. I mean, you know the discussion. Anyway, I would like to hear Dave Pratt speak to council.
I think that he came and was observing our meeting when he read in the agenda that we were going to discuss the fire services review study, and he spoke at length. And I think that because Mono is served by 4 fire departments, that I think to invite just him then as if somebody has a delegation that they want to bring to us about something specific, it behooves them to be the ones to make the application for the delegation, I think. For us to be seeking it out, I think it's unfair to only invite him. So I think that we should invite the fire chiefs from the other fire services as well to make delegations.
Yeah, go ahead.
But with respect, Melinda, that speaks to the governance issue, and I'm not sure we need the fire chief to talk to us about the governance issue. I wanted to hear, there are changes in provincial regulations about the number of our firefighters that have to get certifications for various levels of qualifications. That's going to cost money. So we're the ones who set the budget. So I think we need to hear about certification, how many of our firefighters need that. And then also, there's various other levels of certification, not mandatory by regulation, but in terms of what level of service we want from the fire department. Those are the 2 subjects that I think he should come and speak to council about. Mike's got his hand up.
So he would be coming then not as the chief of the Shelburne and District Fire Department, which services only a quarter of our town, but he would be coming as the recent head of the fire chiefs. It would have to. The issue is that all of the fire departments are under the same stress with respect to certifying their firefighters, and they're all managing quite well. Well, I don't know about Caledon and Orangeville, to be honest. I only know about Rosemont and Shelburne, because those are the boards I sit on. So, and they both have done things to help our service. So I just would like, if somebody's going to speak, that it is that they're speaking to our whole town. Mike?
Yeah, and I think council definitely had that there was that issue of level of service between the 4 different boards. I thought we discussed this at the last meeting, that we sort of, this presentation or delegation that you would like the fire chief to, Should that not be presented to the board approve it, and then that be something that's funneled down to the municipalities that they serve? That way the board knows, because the board needs these questions answered, right? What is the level of service? What's the minimum? What's the maximum? What are we doing that is above and beyond the requirement? And then I think the same thing can occur with respect to Rosemont. And if they outline to the board their training woes or concerns with respect to new legislation, and that report gets approved at the board level, then I would think that should funnel down to the municipality. Because if we don't set goals as to what he's coming to answer, I'm not sure how we're advancing anything.
With respect, Mike, he has lectured the board on that very subject. I'm not sure we've told him yet how far we want to go. Some of the costs will be in our 2026 budget. But what I think he should do is come and speak to council so that the public, our residents, can hear this subject. I think it's very informative. I mean, for one thing, as the fire chief of the Shelburne District Fire Board, he provides services in 5 municipalities. They all have different bylaws in terms of what service levels they want or expect or are willing to pay for. That makes it very confusing when you have a truck go out for a fire call, or are we going to Mulmer, or are we going to Mono? Oh, well, there's different levels of service they provide. I mean, as a practical matter, it's probably not that complicated, but it does create difficulties. And in the particular case of Mono, our bylaw is so out of date, and if you compared it with, we have service agreements with Caledon and Orangeville that specify what services that we get. Our bylaw with respect to Shelburne and Rosemount is way out of date. I think it needs to be updated, and that's why I think our fire chief should come and speak to us so the public can hear this.
Elaine and then Melinda.
Thank you, Your Worship. People are saying with change in legislation, is there new changes in the legislation since the last change in legislation that dictated what firefighter training needed to happen?
No, I think it's
No.
part of the same. It was just the dates that we have to comply are July of 1986 for one level certification, and then
2026.
yeah,
I like
2026.
86 better.
Sorry.
2026 and 2028.
Yeah, those are the next two targets we have to meet.
Well, I think, I have to say that we have fire boards for a reason, and we have representatives on council on those fire boards for a reason, and if we have questions that council has, then those representatives should take them back to those respective boards and ask the questions and get the answers to bring them back. So, if there is an opportunity to hear from our fire chiefs, we do have the OPP come out to speak at our town open halls, town hall meetings, and maybe we want to invite the fire chiefs to a town hall meeting. I don't know if we've ever done that, but I just throw that out there.
Can I make a suggestion? I think the argument for having the Shelburne chief here equally applies to the chief of Rosemont, equally frankly applies to the chief of Caledon and Orangeville, inasmuch as they all deserve to be heard about their frustrations with our bylaw or their training issues or whatever. I don't know that we have enough hours in the day to have delegation after delegation after delegation. If we could get them all here at once, that would be wonderful. What we don't want is a PR show where they have a 20-page PowerPoint about how magnificent they are. We know that already. We want a productive discussion about what they would like to see from us. Now, I think we can say to our reps on the fire boards, go back to the fire boards. We would welcome a discussion, but it has to be fruitful, and it has to be more than a 20-page PowerPoint presentation. of statistics. Mike, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, like, I think I'm definitely not opposed to this. I think it's needed. Deputy Mayor Nix has definitely outlined, we're repeating our concerns, right? And that's why, like you say, the chief has lectured the board.
Yes.
Is there, and I'm not talking PowerPoint, is there like the public, while it's in person, is great and would be nice to meet the chief. Is there a report prepared by the chief outlining and identifying the change in service between Momer and Mono? Is there some, that's what I'm getting at, is a delegation is a moment in time, and a report will stand the test of time. And that'll put it into writing what we need and what the concerns are. And I think that's really where I'm going, is I don't see enough information there yet to understand what the new legislations are requiring, and I think that the residents of Mono would benefit more from something hard copy from the chief, and that's really where I was going with this.
I don't, you want to go first, Melinda?
Well, just a couple of points of clarification, that I know that our agreements on the fire boards and our fire bylaw are older, but I think to say that they're woefully out of date and that to imply that there's a problem, I think is incorrect. I think that they are very broad, and that because they are old, new things have come into play, and so they are specifically, if you were going to write a new bylaw, you would have some specific things perhaps written in there that aren't in ours. But I don't want to give the impression to any of our residents that our fire services or that our bylaw and what it is that we're asking for the town is in any way inadequate. It just could have, because it's 2025 now, it could have some T's crossed and I's dotted. And there is, as you know, from our recent meetings, discussions, and Schedule A documents, there are some reports out there with respect to some suggestions as to where we're going, and the boards are discussing that. But without question, all of our again, the two that I'm familiar with are providing. The men are all, or the firefighters, because we've got some women, are all certified the way they need to be. And there's a plan to have them all certified coming up to meeting the recommendations. It's just gonna cost more. And so it's nice to have it laid out. But I don't think that we've heard any report, Fred, from any fire department that there's really a problem with respect to level of service.
Well, to answer Mike's question, 2 meetings ago, when he gave us that long lecture about levels of service, I think that was about an hour-long lecture. I mean, it's very detailed. There's no way you can do that as a delegation to Mono, but it's a complicated subject. Let me just give, and you'll remember this, Melinda, one tiny example. At Shelburne, we have a number of fire. Yes, Mike? Oh. We have a number of volunteer firefighters who are certified to do car rescue, if it's on its wheels. We have no volunteer firefighters at Shelburne who've got their certification to do car rescue if the car is upside down. Now, does that mean if they're called out to a crash on Highway 10 and the car is upside down, they don't do a rescue? No, of course they do. All I'm saying is, we had no one take that course that's got a certification that says they're qualified to do that, okay? That's a tiny example. But we have several situations like that. I'll give you another example. And this probably we don't need from Shelburne, but we probably need this from Orangeville. We have no one on the Shelburne District Fire Board who's certified to do open water rescue. Well, we don't have any open water in the Shelburne call area that would need it. But for Orangeville, if we had a boat capsize in Island Lake, in my understanding, I think someone in Orangeville has that certification. But so I'm giving you several examples here. I mean, that's one that we don't need from Shelburne because we don't have any open water, but we do need it from Orangeville. Those are the type, I mean, I've given you two tiny examples, Mike, but his list went on for an hour in his lecture to us.
Elaine?
Respectfully, this is not on the agenda, and now it's become a topic of conversation for about 15 minutes. And I think we need to, if this is a topic for an agenda item, then we should put it on the agenda for the next meeting, so.
It was being done in the context of the unfinished council business list. So.
Well, where is it on the unfinished business? I don't see that item.
But I think Fred was wondering whether it should be put on that list. And then that
Well,
led
then
to
there
the.
needs to be a motion to put that on the list as per our usual practice. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Well, except I think the clerk answered my question. He said it doesn't need to be on the list. He just needs consensus from the council as to whether or not we want to invite the chief down here for a delegation. From the chatter I'm hearing, you know what, I'm willing to just wash my hands of this. The chief asked me to see if he could get a delegation here. If council doesn't want to hear it, fine, that's fine by me.
Let's hear from the respective chiefs as to whether they have something to say to us. Okay, I think
Mr.
that's the
Mayor?
most important thing, and something to
Mr.
say that
Mayor?
is of substance. Elaine?
Your worship, like, people don't have to come through us to ask for a delegation. They just.
That's correct.
They usually go to the clerk and say, I'd like to make a delegation. Is that not correct?
That's usually the way it happens.
So the chief could go to our clerk and say, I'd like to come and do a delegation. So,
The clerk has gone to, the chief has gone to the clerk by asking me to ask the clerk whether he can do a delegation. The clerk's response to me was, he'll do whatever council wants.
Okay, let's have the chiefs go directly to the clerk, and I think we want to hear specifically what, we don't want a fly the flag delegation where they tell us all of the stuff that we almost know already. We want substance from them as to what their problems are with our bylaw, what the issues are with regard to training, whatever, but focus the presentation. That's all I suggest. Ralph?
I'm not at all adverse to having the chiefs here. I think it's good to have a face-to-face so they know who they're talking to, we know who they are. But if they come, it should be basically, they're bringing issues that they want us to understand and to help them deal with.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. I think we've exhausted this, and I'm going to put out this particular fire. Anything else on the unfinished council business list? At the risk of raising something that's not on that list and not having a motion to put it on the list, council will recall that we had a discussion about having a change to our website to include an advocacy page with a number of links to letters that we've sent to the province, letters that have been sent to us by the province as examples. I forgot that I hadn't moved a motion to that effect, but if I can leave that with the clerk, and then maybe we can talk about how we prioritize that.
Yeah, my office is working on doing that already, Your Worship. It hasn't been fully executed yet, but discussions have been had and action is being taken,
Okay.
and it will show up in due course.
Okay, I'm fine with that. Anything else with the list? Okay. Under bylaws, correspondence, new business, we have a designation of the Glenhoe School, SS 19, under the Ontario Heritage Act. And can we very quickly describe what is involved in that? Anyone from the Heritage Committee would like to come forward? I think we've already heard from you. This is just a formality, frankly. If there's nothing else to add, if we haven't had any negative or critical comments back?
No, we received no response to the notice, the legislated notice on this designation.
Okay, it's good news then. Okay, I have a motion that we introduce and give the necessary readings to a bylaw to designate concession 2, West E Part Lot 20, as known municipally as 386268 20th Side Road in the town of Mono, also known locally as Glenhoe SS 19, under the Ontario Heritage Act, that it be signed by the mayor and clerks for the town of Mono, sealed and engrossed in the bylaw book. Do I have a mover? Councillor Davies, seconded by Councillor Magdalow. Any further discussion? Oh, Councillor Magdalow?
I'd like to ask one of the representatives of the Heritage Committee to, just a couple of points. I'm assuming that the owners are happy with this, or can you clarify that? And the second thing is what's this building being used for at the moment?
It's the wool business.
Good morning. I'm Barbara Jafflis, Chair of the Heritage Committee. The owners not only are pleased about it, they partially instituted the designation. So, plus, it's stirred quite a bit of interest from local communities in and around the school. We've had comments from people that actually attended the school, and we're looking forward to putting the plaque on the building.
The current use?
The
current use of the building, please?
I'm sorry?
What is the current use of the building?
Currently, it's being used as adjacent building attached to it is a yarn wool store, which is, I guess, zoned commercial, and it probably puts more economy back into Mono's coffers. So the rule of thumb is that it's being used. It'll be certainly well looked after, and we look forward to the approval of the bylaw.
Sorry not to belabor it, but so there's an adjacent building that's being used for the yarn?
It's an auxiliary building that
Right.
is attached. It was originally a woodworking shop,
Right.
and it's been taken over by the family that actually lives in the school, and it's being run as a wool store.
Okay, that clarifies it. I didn't know that anybody was living in the school.
And if there's any knitters within hearing distance of my voice, it is a lovely business. My daughter is a knitter, and it's one of her places that she likes to buy her materials. Okay. Any opposed to the motion as read? That motion is carried. Thank you very much again for your work on that. Next item is the Heritage Advisory Committee Resolution of Advice to Council, and it's on the Maple Row. And I think we've all read the report. Fred?
Yes, I've read the report, and before you put a motion on the floor, I was just going to suggest that we, with all due respect to the Heritage Committee, this was actually a project of the Recreation Advisory Committee, and we have the person who was the chair of the committee at the time in the audience, and he, in fact, was the person who planted those trees. The trees were actually donated by the town, by Mike Dunmore, and there was a reason for it. So, without being for or against the recommendation that's in front of us, I personally think we should check with the Recreation Advisory Committee as to what they think about this, and also, I'd like to hear our forester's opinion as to whether the suggestion made by the Heritage Committee is in fact accurate.
Suggestions, Ralph?
So I like the support for our national tree. I think that's really great. Fred's points, I think, are very good. I think we need a little bit of expertise because the Heritage Committee is criticizing, or not criticizing, but looking ahead and saying this is not going to be good for the maple trees because the other trees are going to grow up around them. I think that's their concern, and so there's a bit of an issue here of what are our priorities. Are our priorities to have a mixed planting or to have pure maple trees? And I don't have fixed views on it, although I did visit the site this morning, And I couldn't see these trees because they're behind a sort of a clump of evergreen trees that are, I was in the new parking lot. I have maple trees and I have pine trees, and I'm not too sure that their growth proposals or suggestions here are accurate. I'd like to see a forester give us an opinion about what this will look like in 10, 20 years, and then we have to decide what we want. But thanks very much to the Heritage Committee for bringing this up. Appreciate it.
So I don't have a prepared motion on this, but can we ask staff to get some advice from our forester as to what's going on there and whether thinning needs to occur or whether we can just leave it as it is?
Yeah, Your Worship, I think if council simply asked staff to do a little bit of investigation, and that would include the RAC committee and the forester, staff will take that on and bring it back to council with this resolution, including that research.
So we're okay with that, folks? Okay.
Elaine's got her hand up. Oh, no, she said
Yeah.
thumbs up.
Okay, okay. Moving along to Public Works tenders, we have a number of them today. The first tender being for lawn maintenance, and Matt, please jump in and describe each tender situation to us, and then I'll read a motion.
Thanks, Mayor Croman. So we haven't, over the past 4 years, Sunshine Landscaping's completed the lawn maintenance on all the town properties, but approximately 20 acres. We tendered it this year, released it for tender. They had held their price consistent for many years. Dating back to 2018, we were at about $1,800 per week. 2019, it went up to 32. And so this year, I would say Unistar, who we haven't used before, our reputable company. We had good references with them. They have bid several years, and they're lower. So the results are favorable, and they're capable of doing the work, and we're going to try them out.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I read this one with interest because the Sunshine's quote is even cheaper than it was last year. Like, they really have been in good faith here, giving us a good price. And so I wonder, and I know you just said all the things I wanted to hear, that they were reputable. I Googled them and couldn't find them. Unistar out of Brampton. I found them not out of Brampton, but so I don't think it's the same company, or is it the same company? It just added a lot of questions to me when somebody comes in that much lower. But this is a 1-year commitment with them, right? And that it's a 2-year, if everything goes well, then it's an automatic 2-year, but otherwise it's a 1-year commitment. I just wonder about, local companies who have, in good faith, given us good service, and there's no reason to not have them anymore, and they come in lower, but we say no, the impression we make.
It's a catch-22, keeping the market, spreading it around, giving the option for people. Lawn maintenance is one of those things that we regularly get requests for. When are you tendering? Could you reach out to me when you're releasing the tender? So it's been 4 years. I think it's appropriate that we open these things up from time to time. It was easy to extend them. They did a great job. Very little complaints with Sunshine, but the times are what they are, and it's important that we get the best bang for our buck. And we're looking forward to working with the Unistar and building a relationship with them. They have worked with other municipalities locally, and York Region, Ajax. I believe also Agilitas. So we're looking forward to it, and we'll see what they could do. We do have mechanisms, obviously, in the tender to, if things don't go well, but we look for building a positive relationship and hoping to do well. We did, just going back with the Lloyd Armstrong Park, we are cutting there bi-weekly, so it saves approximately $1,100 this season with doing the bi-weekly cutting at Lloyd Armstrong only. I don't think we could push it to too far beyond. beyond that without having to bog the lawnmowers up and spend extra time at those parks. But yeah, just wanted to make that note.
Just a quick question. Do we not go bi-weekly when summer's progressing and we're into August and the grass is growing not quite as fast as it does in May and June?
Good question, Mayor Krillman. Yes, if things are drying up, we do hold them off. It's a reduction in payment. So we, last year was a different story. It was fairly wet summer and we were cutting regularly, but we have held them back in previous seasons.
And there's no penalty to us doing that?
There's no penalty. We do have a payment plan. In that case, we pay 50% of the cut rate is how it's structured. So they don't attend and it's 50% of that property. So if there's some properties that they don't cut, it's 50% of that cut rate. So there's a price for every property. Some are as low as $30 per cut, right? So it's to secure that contract.
Okay, so I have a motion that the town of Mono accept the price of $2,932.35, inclusive of HST per cut from Unistar General Inc. of Brampton, Ontario, and further that the contract may be extended to 2026, subject to the work meeting all the contract requirements described within the signed bid document, completed to a level that is satisfactory to the town and competitive pricing. Do I have a mover on that? Councillor Capes moves, seconded by Councillor Mantalo. Any further discussion? That motion is carried. Next item on the agenda is the, let me just go here, dust suppressant.
Yep, thank you. So a few years ago, we tried to open it up to have an alternative product for road stabilization and dust suppressant material, and we haven't been receiving too many bids over the years. I think there's one other contractor that has bid in the past, but this year did not bid. Daly has been, a big supplier of road stabilization, dust suppressant throughout Ontario and beyond, and they've been excellent to work with over the years. There's about a 4.2% increase from last year's rate. As you can see in the report, there's been a steady climb over the years. We've had to adjust operations slightly. We obviously focusing on higher volume roads, and we rotate our zones around every year, so the same people aren't getting calcium at the same time every year. So we do rotate those zones around, and we try to, fit within the budget. So 800,000 liters approximately is applied every year. Doing the math there, it's slightly over, so we'll have to make some changes within the budget or within our operations to make that fit in there.
Okay, Ralph?
Matt, thank you. I have to say, wow, I just did the math on this, and it's a $331,000 expense for us. Could you just elaborate a little bit on what the usage of this has been over the last few years? Have we been increasing our volumes or decreasing it, or what's happening overall?
Thanks, Councillor Mantalo. It's been consistent, I would say. We focus on the higher volume roads. Sometimes we have to do 2 passes. It all depends on how dry the spring is. If Mother Nature works with us, it's very effective and it stays in the road base. If we have to keep grading roads, the more we grade roads, the more we lose that dust suppressant. It's absorbing moisture out of the air, right? And so if the roads stay damp, and if we could get on them fairly early in the spring and use Mother Nature to our benefit, then it's helpful. But some seasons it doesn't allow us to do that, and then we get heavy deluge rains that washes the road away. So it all depends on that, but we do try to keep it within the 300,000. That's our budget this year. That number that you just mentioned, 330, is taxes included. Les could probably give you we can make it work this year, but it is getting tighter and tighter every year.
My question should have been framed a bit more clearly, I guess, but I'm asking about the volumes that we're putting on over the years, over the last 10 years or so. Are we
Same amount.
Same amounts?
Yeah.
Okay. It's certainly a valuable thing. It makes a huge difference to residents, for sure.
Yeah, and I don't want there to be a misconception that it's dust suppressant only. Like, this is a part of the stabilizing the road, right? Like, it keeps the gravel in the road, it tightens the road up, right? It's not just for dust suppressant. It stabilizes the roadway and strengthens it.
So with a wet summer, we could see a reduction in the amount of orders for this.
Pardon me, a reduction in what?
In our ordering of dust suppressant
Yeah,
material.
we treat all the roads, and if it's a damp summer, it tends to stay in the road. It holds in the road a little bit more. But if it dries out and we have a long drought, it's not going to be as effective. So but again, if you have a heavy deluge rain like we normally get now, where we're getting all this rain in a short period of time, it washes off the road. It gets into the road and it mucks up, and then we have to grade it, and you lose it in the grading. So it's finding that sweet spot, but yeah, we try to apply it once. Some roads we've had to go back and reapply. Blind line, 30 side road, heavy north-south roads that are higher volume, east-west roads that are run parallel to 89. So some years we've had to go back and do another pass.
Okay.
So, but generally around 800,000 every year. But we do we do what we can to reduce it wherever we can.
Okay. Just looking for economies here.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a clarification. It goes on as a liquid, right?
That's right. So we have to, thanks, Councillor Davey, we do have to grade the road, open it up, apply water to the road for it to before we spray it on the road, before the tanker arrives and sprays it. Now, this generally starts early in the morning, before the sun's out beating the road, because we're, again, using that moisture that's created overnight. And we try to get going early in the morning, because those trucks are obviously coming from a long distance, so we're lucky to get 2 a day. And so, yeah.
Okay. I have a motion that council for the town of Mono accept a unit bid price of .414 per litre, inclusive of HST, from Daily Dust Control of Stony Creek, Ontario, and further the council may extend to 2026. The contract may be extended to 2026, subject to the work meeting all the contract requirements described within the signed bid document, completed to a level that is satisfactory to the town, and competitive pricing. Do I have a mover on that? Councillor Davey, seconded by Deputy Mayor Nix. Any further discussion? Seeing none, that motion carries. Next item has to do with granular A. And if you can take us through this.
Yes, a little bit of background on this is a few years ago, well, maybe 5 years ago, we added limestone, as council's aware, and in the past, prior to that, we would have a granular M or A gravel only in our tender, but we added limestone into the tender to get 2 unit bid prices for the products, depending on the road requirements. So, as I mentioned before, we tend to use traditional granular A on a lot of the hills and curves, because the limestone is very difficult to ice blade in the wintertime. So we do have the 2 products for that reason. Again, limestone has been very effective, but the operations, the more that we use it and we've applied it, we're in about the 5 or 6 year cycle right now. There are benefits and there are downfalls to it. The larger aggregate does break down a little bit. It's a little bit softer than the traditional A, the larger stone in it. And it is, but when it packs down, it packs really hard. So in the wintertime, when we go to ice blade with the graders, it's hard to get that material up. So we're finding we're being able to tweak these materials together and apply them in certain areas. And it's effective, and every year the guys find more efficiencies with placing the gravel in certain locations. The price for limestone in the recommended bid is very good, if you look historically. So we're going to hopefully utilize that product on majority of our roads. It is slightly, if you use the 15,000 plus 30,000 total with those two unit bid prices, it is over budget. I did ask council for 600,000 in the fall. It was reduced to 550,000, so we'll have to adjust those application rates a little bit to fall within the allocated budget.
Any questions, discussion? Fred?
No, I was surprised that the limestone crusher came in at such a good price and is markedly cheaper than granular A. Yeah, well, it's a good price. I'm wondering if, I don't know how many kilometers of road you're gonna do with the limestone crusher this year, but at that price, I just wondered if, because our long run goal is to get more and more of our roads with that limestone crusher, and that's an awfully good price for this year. And have you extended the number of kilometers of road we're gonna use it on?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Nix. Yeah, we're gonna work. It won't be 15,000 and 15,000. We're gonna work with those numbers and see what roads need what, and we're gonna try to work with the contractor to work with what roads we need to apply maintenance gravel on. As you know, the zones have been reduced. We kind of prioritize roads within each zone. We don't have the quantity like we used to have, the 44,000 tons a year, to be able to treat every road every year, so we sometimes have to go back, so we will work with the contractor for that. The unit bid price is really what's going on in the economy, who's putting up how much material. New pits are, there's a newer pit in Arthur that's a little bit closer that has a good limestone source, so it all depends on how much they buy and how much they end up selling, and really what's available. So
it's remarkable to me that local sources are being outbid by somebody in Wingham, Ontario. And one of the major local sources isn't even part of the bidding process this year, having been part of it in previous years. Is there any explanation for that? Are they just more aggressive, or?
yeah, they're looking for work. That's all I could really. It's hard to really say without having those frank conversations with them to really understand. Again, it's what they purchase and how much, and if that material that they purchased last year doesn't sell, it may be stockpiled, and it's hard to say.
They put it on sale. Okay, I have a motion, the council for the town of Mono accept the unit bid prices of $24.30 and $19.66 per ton, inclusive of HST, from Joe Kerr Limited of Wingham, Ontario, to supply and replace and placement of approximately 30,000 tons of granular A and 19 millimeter limestone crusher run, and that the contract may be extended to 2026, subject to the work meeting all the contract requirements described within the signed bid document, completed to a level that is satisfactory to the town, and competitive pricing. Do I have Councillor Mactilo moves, seconded by Councillor Capes. Any further questions, comments? Seeing none, the motion is carried. Winter Road sand.
Yes, thank you. So pretty straightforward. Four contractors bid on this. I believe it was about a 4% increase from last year. We definitely used quite a bit this year with the weather we've had. The plowing, labor, and application of winter salt sand was definitely increased. We recently filled the dome. About the second week of February, I guess, was the last time we filled the dome. So this contract will be a fill in September, and then again in next February. So approximately 6,400 tons. The dome holds approximately 6,000. So it all, it fell under the budget, but that could change depending on what the winter throws at us again next year. And there's hopefully no more this year.
Fred?
Yeah, just the contracts for the sand and mixing it and putting it in the dome. Where's the contract for the salt?
So, thanks, Deputy Mayor Nix. We purchase this, the town purchases the salt directly from the supplier. So it's delivered, and then the contractor works with our town staff to mix that in and put it in the stacker to put into the dome.
So when you're dumping the sand in, when the truck is dumping the sand into some type of elevator that takes it up to the top of the dome, you're putting salt in with it as it goes up?
Yeah, it's mixed on the ground with the bucket.
Oh, I
So
see.
the ratio is sorted out. It's not a complete accurate, you know, it's within 3 to 5% salt and it's, they've, you know, the loader operators have got pretty good at being able to mix and load this material, so. It really is to stop the sand from freezing in the dome, right? You never get it out of there. There is some benefit, obviously, on the road as well, but ideally you don't want to be applying salt on gravel roads, and you know, but there is a benefit on the asphalt roads as well. But we have to adjust our applications of salt sand mix or straight salt depending on what the weather's doing.
Okay, any other questions? I have a motion that council for the town of Mono accept the unit bid price of $22.58 per ton, inclusive of HST, from James Dick Construction Limited of Bolton, Ontario, to supply, mix, and stockpile approximately 6,400 tons of winter road sand for the 2025-2026 season, and further that the contract may be extended to 2026, subject to the work meeting all the contract requirements as described within the signed bid document, that completed to a level that is satisfactory to the town and competitive pricing. Do I have a mover on that? Councillor Capes moves, seconded by Councillor Manctillo. Any further debate? Any opposed? The motion is carried. And now we are on to road sweeping.
Yes, thank you. So Fairfield Seabourn, we've been working with since 2023, and we've had, they're out of Caledon. We've had really good luck with them. As you can see, we've shifted from 2 units to 3 units, but it has reduced the time. We kind of could work with our trucks a little bit better because they sweep the subdivisions, which will be coming up sometime in April if we get the melt in time. But that'll be dependent on the melt and weather. But the 3 units have helped out the last few years. It's made the operations a lot more efficient. So we're able to load trucks and get them get the work wrapped up fairly quick this year, or in last couple of years. So yeah, they held their price, so there's no increase with that, and we're looking forward to working with them again.
Ralph?
Thanks, Matt. This is an hourly rate. About how many hours do we usually have per year?
Approximately 70. And again, we've applied quite a bit of, I'm sure everybody's seen this salt sand or the sand on the roads. It really depends on how that goes. We try to hold it off as long as we can to monitor the weather, the forecast, to make sure that we're not sweeping and then turning around and applying winter sand again. But intersections, we do sometimes, some years we do the bridges. We do have the trackless sidewalk machine that not only does the sidewalks, but it does have a sweeper on it that we could sweep our bridges and whatnot. But sometimes it's just it's a little bit more efficient for these guys to come up and sweep the bridges for us, so we could load them directly into our tandems and take it away. So.
I have a question. Is this not a contract that is that sort of shouts out for joint tendering with Orangeville, Shelburne, other municipalities that require sweeping?
Thank
Could
you
we
for the
not get
question.
economies of scale?
We have looked at that in the past. Again, it's does Mono want to be first or second or third? Residents usually, as soon as the weather turns nice, we're getting a lot of calls for, can you be out here right now? And right now, we have the ability to control it. I don't know if it would be, there would be a lot of savings in it, but I know that there may be a delay in the service, in the time frame. So Orangeville, say we went with Orangeville or Amaranth potentially, would be and there's not a lot of, I don't know, but who would be first? So we're pushing Mono residents may be held off, and then you throw in the weather, it may be delayed. But we have looked into it in the past to potentially go that route and look into those different things, and even buy a town sweeper that could maybe even
nobody's
look into that.
suggesting
But yeah, there would be a delay in the service, right? Who gets priority, right? So Orangeville has a different, little bit bigger area to take care
Do
of,
they not
right?
have their own sweeper?
They may have one or two sweepers. I don't know for sure. But I know that they would take priority if they did.
Yeah.
So we have the ability to control it, right? It's our contract, and you know, we specify the date that they start, and they're pretty good at responding.
And to be clear, this is mainly to the benefit of the subdivisions?
Yes, intersections, bridges, as well, but primarily the asphalt roads and subdivisions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any further questions, comments?
Just a small comment, I guess, to the residents that might listen. This would be an example of when we talk about level of service. What does our budget want to do for level of service, right? And that we yes, by economizing, by hooking in with somebody else, but then your service is down. So because that's a question for people, right? That they don't quite know what that means.
Well, I hope maybe by the time we debate the next budget, we can see whether or not, regardless of whether we are first in order or second in order, whether that has a meaningful impact on the, $447.48 per hour price. I mean, if it cuts it in half, then maybe that is worth considering, even if we are second to be done. But that's hypothetical right now.
Yeah, you're always at the mercy of the weather too, right? Like it's the weather. So if Orangeville's delayed, and by that time, if you have a couple heavy snowfalls or rainfalls, you're washed all that winter sand down into the catch basins, which we have to suck those catch basins out. We have to clean the storm ponds, the head walls. There's a trickle down effect to not sweeping in a timely, on a timely schedule. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
A question, Matt. I think this works out to $30-something thousand. Do you have a ballpark figure on the cost of a sweeper?
The cost of a brand new sweeper?
Yeah. Or a used one even?
I would say probably in the $100,000 to $200,000 range, maybe more. Like a tandem now was $300,000 to $300,000. So these are much more technical, complex machines.
Yeah.
They could drive on the roads, like they could mobilize from site to site, right? They're not like they're just a slow-moving vehicle, but they have the ability to go on the highway. So wouldn't be cheap.
Might be worth knowing. We're looking at a significant cost here.
Yeah.
And I recognize they're not being used for a long period of time every year, so it's mostly going to sit dormant. But it'd be interesting to know if we could do it ourselves.
Yeah, so, and I should point out too that we do sweep and back charge Watermark subdivision. So we do that every year. So there is a little bit of recovery there in the cost.
Okay.
Your Worship, just for Councillor Manklow, so a couple pop-ups, 265,000 to 318,000 for a 2018 used sweeper. So 2018.
Seems to answer it.
Okay, I have a motion that the council for the town of Mono accept the price of $447.48 per hour, inclusive of HST, for the supply and operation of 3 road sweepers from Fairfield Seaborne Contractors, Inc. of Caledon, Ontario, to provide road sweeping on various roads in the town of Mono, and further that the contract may be extended to 2026, subject to the work meeting all the contract requirements described within the signed bid document, completed to a level that is satisfactory to the town and competitive pricing. Do I have a mover? Councillor Capes moves, seconded by Deputy Mayor Nix. Any further discussion? And that motion is carried. And that takes us to crack sealing.
Yes, thank you. So this year, the town crack seals approximately 35,000 meters every year as part of its program. As I mentioned during the budget discussions in the last fall, there becomes a point where there's no longer a benefit to it. Some of the roads that were recommended this year, they're on the cusp of whether or not they need to be crack sealed. It's just putting good money over bad in some cases. 5 Side Road we released the tender for it today, so that won't be a candidate for crack sealing this year. But we do rotate. I believe we started the program around 2016-ish, and it's been effective. It obviously stops salt-laden water from getting into the cracks throughout the spring months, and then freezing and thawing. So we have seen it does extend the life of the asphalt, and we have had competitive pricing over the last since we've been tendering this out. With this year having a reduction of about 4.8% in the price per meter, and yeah, so we're looking forward to getting that program started up right after street sweeping, where the cracks are somewhat open before they heat up in the summer months and they squeeze shut, right? So it's ideal that we apply this crack sealant in the colder months when the cracks are still open a little bit, so as the asphalt warms, it seals up. The next tender that we'll be talking about, pavement markings, we obviously will be applying those pavement markings after all the crack sealing's done in the fall.
And I guess the argument on going with a neighbor is that we might be second and they don't get to seal up the cracks fast enough before the summer heat hits.
Yeah, obviously with the operations, it's like, again, the weather throws a monkey wrench in it, and having it one thing follow the next is ideal, especially when you're throwing in dust suppressant, you're throwing in calcium, you're doing maintenance gravel resurfacing, street sweeping, all those things. You have to have a perfect weather conditions for all those things to follow. Traffic counting. We try not to put the counters. We have to have the counters out at certain times so they're not crack sealing over traffic counters or pavement markings over traffic counters, dust suppressant. So there's just so many things that have to almost be perfect for that to work, and relying on other municipalities or having them come first or after, it becomes a challenge.
I feel obliged to ask each and every time regardless. So I have a motion that council for the town of Mono accept the unit bid price of $1.58 per meter, inclusive of HST, for crack sealing from Northern Sealants, Inc. of Sudbury, Ontario, and that further the contract may be extended to 2026, subject to the work meeting all the contract requirements described within the signed bid document, completed to a level that is satisfactory to the town and competitive pricing. And that's moved by Councillor Davey, seconded by Councillor Mantalo. Any further discussion? Any opposed? And that motion is carried. Next item is pavement markings.
Yes, thank you. So as I mentioned with the crack sealing, pavement markings typically occurs in late summer, early fall, just before winter months. By that time, all our main operations are wrapped up, the roads are clean, and in preparation for the winter months. We We saw about a 12.5% decrease from last year, which is really good. We have about 66,000 meters to paint, center line and edge line, and then we have a variety of crosswalks, stop bars, right, left turn arrows and whatnot that are in addition to that. We did shift to durable paint on the crosswalks, symbols, and stop bars a few years ago, which resulted in us being able to not have to paint them every year. We've seen a significant life increase in those. So we monitor them every year. We do have a price for it, but if they're still in good shape, then we delay it. So there's been value in that.
Does the delay apply equally to side markings and center line if they have survived the year more or
No.
less intact?
We haven't, it's all center line and edge line are waterborne, so they deteriorate a lot quicker. You have the plows constantly going over top of them,
Okay.
and a lot of the traffic driving over top of them, so they do deteriorate a lot quicker. It would be very expensive to do center line and edge line with durable. It would be very expensive. So you'll notice you'll notice if you're walking or you drive up to a stop bar, you'll see like a thicker paint.
Yeah.
It's very thick. Obviously, the cars are stopping on that all the time and driving over it. Same with crosswalks, turn symbols. Those are typically durable, whereas the center lines, they get beat up a little bit more. So they are waterborne. It's much cheaper per meter.
Is the waterborne better for the environment?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, any questions, comments? So I have a motion that the town of Mono accept the overall bid price of $43,346.80, inclusive of HST, from McGuinness Coatings Limited of Port Perry, Ontario, to apply pavement markings on various roads in the town of Mono, and further that the contract may be extended to 2026, subject to the work meeting all the contract requirements described within the signed bid document and completed to a level that is satisfactory to the town and competitive pricing. Do I have a mover? I see Deputy Mayor Nix and Councillor Cape seconds. Any further discussion? That motion is carried. Phew. Does anyone want to have a break? Councillor Capes?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just do want to say to Matt, thank you very much for the historical information. I think that's
Yes.
very helpful.
Yeah.
And also for your valuable comments and your expertise. I really appreciate that, and we're grateful to have you on staff for sure. I know we keep asking the question about whether you call it collaborating or sharing or whatever, and having that approach. There is not always, as you pointed out, a clear economy of scale benefit. And so that it is complex. And so obviously these companies exist to service everybody, and everybody makes their contracts with them so that they get their service when they need their service. And so I appreciate how you bring to the conversation the complexity of and the potential for degraded service if we were to seek some other arrangement. So thank you for that. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Matt?
Thank you, Councillor Capes. I do want to note too that Michael Nicholas and Kara Grigoris did a lot of the legwork on these tenders. Michael worked really hard to update the tenders and modernize them and add a lot of more verbiage to them. And he and Kara worked pretty hard to get those out and prepare the reports and do the evaluations. So they deserve
Thanks, and our thanks to you
support on
and your
that.
team.
Anyway,
Okay,
thank you.
applause to them too.
So, Matt, just for our memory, Michael is the new manager of Public Works? Yeah,
Yes,
Thank
Michael
you.
started November 6th.
right.
Okay, let's break for, what's the wish, 5 minutes, 10 minutes? 10 minutes, let's say 10 minutes. So coming back in 10 minutes sharp. Okay.
We are back live.
Thank you.
We're back live now.
Sorry, Your Honor, I was
It's
involved
okay.
with a very important strategic discussion.
So the next item on the agenda is Committee of Adjustment Rules of Procedure, and I'll turn it over to Fred to give us context.
So council will recall that I made the recommendation last fall that the town draft a set of rules and procedures specific to the Committee of Adjustment that would recognize that committee's unique role in the town as a quasi-judicial committee as opposed to an advisory committee. And these procedures you have before you are what I've prepared in consultation with several other municipalities and other staff. These procedures need to be adopted by the committee themselves. So they're before council for your comment, and those comments will then go to the committee with this for their debate and eventual adoption.
Fred?
Yeah, I have read through this and stayed awake. I only have one comment, and it's not, I want to be careful, Mr. Simpson. It's not important enough. I'll go with the document that you have, okay? That said, I do have one concern. That I think there are times when it is necessary for tribunals or committees that are making decisions to go in camera to discuss the issue out of the view of the public. I know that sounds terrible, but in my more than 30 years experience sitting on the boards of conservation authorities, where quite frankly, I've had both experiences. After listening to an applicant and staff, then debating in public versus listening to staff and the applicant and then going in camera to debate it. I'm actually all in favor of allowing the committee to go in camera as they could under the Planning Act. I think I got that right. And as I think you have told me, some municipalities do allow their committees of adjustment to do this. In the document you've given us, no, it's going to be, everything has to be done in the open. Fine, I can live with that. I'm just saying my preference would be, and I'll give you the reason why. In my experience, after listening for half an hour to the technical experts and the applicant and the staff, and then trying to have a debate when I've sat on the board of the NVCA in public, the debate is, when you're sitting on the board of the NVCA and you've got the applicant sitting in front of you and the technical experts and your staff, and now you're expected to debate something, the level of debate is not particularly good. The board members are, I don't know what the word is, plain to their audience. Compare that with the Credit Valley Conservation, where 2 months ago we did hold a hearing, a long one, all morning long, and we went in camera and we had an hour and a half or a 2-hour debate, very vigorous debate. It's not that the debate hid anything from the public, but there were some really difficult issues to grapple with, and among the board members, we went back and forth. Now, when we're in camera, we can call in a technical expert for clarification if we need to, and it was a long, vigorous debate, very healthy debate, very respectful. At the end of the day, of course, when you finish the debate, you have to come out of in camera and go in public, and then you pass your motion, and you have to give your reasons for the decision. Anyway, my preference is to allow the Committee of Adjustment to, reserve its decision. You've not allowed that in this document. I can live with it. I'm just telling you what my preference is.
Ralph, then Melinda.
Fred, I hear you. I think I understand your point. It's a matter of being somewhat inhibited by being in public. But I'd suggest that that the benefits of not going in camera for a municipality are different than they are for a conservation authority, and that we should stay with this proposal.
Melinda?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I hear what you're saying Fred, I agree with Ralph. I think that the difference, I know it's unusual, the difference is that in contrast to other places where opinion is important, this is really, the technical and the facts go together, and because it's such a limited scope that the committee has for minor variances and severances, that there really shouldn't be any need to worry that what you're saying would be interpreted as not being very friendly or nice or respectful or whatever, which is what happens in closed session debate, because there's opinions that are going around. Yeah. So I think that's the reason why it's extremely important that we really delineate that this is a different committee, but should be within our way of doing things like we're doing right now, discussing it completely only in front. When three of us were standing in the coffee room afterwards, conversation can't go. The two people happening, one person comes in, the conversation changes because we can't have quorum behind closed doors. That's not the way it works.
Well, I think everybody would agree that it's always easier to have discussions behind closed doors. It's always easier. I mean, and it may be more fruitful, but it's not good public business in my view. You know, we wouldn't be here if we were timid about expressing our opinions and views and willing to accept criticism from each other and the public. Melinda makes a very good point, and that is it's not to diminish the work that the committee does. But I can't imagine anything that it does warranting an in-camera approach, especially a routine in-camera approach where every single application is suddenly swept off the table, goes in camera, and then erupts fully formed as a decision. I think that's a disservice to the public and unnecessary, absolutely unnecessary. If there were an occasion that required an in-camera component, like any other committee of council, they could refer to the criteria in the Municipal Act. And that would be their fallback to have, as we have, in-camera discussions about things that are more sensitive or are in the interests of the public to be dealt with, you know, behind closed doors, such as, you know, legal opinions and that kind of thing. But I commend the clerk on his work. I think it sends the right message to the committee. And I don't think there's an appetite to go behind closed doors, nor should there be.
So I'm outvoted. I gathered that. As I said at the beginning.
Nobody's against the idea at all.
I can live with the document as it is. Maybe, though, I should suggest that we should tell the Supreme Court of Canada that they should do their debates in public, too.
Well, that's a little different.
Yeah, can I just follow up and clarify that, yeah, that the Supreme Court is actually dealing with sensitive issues and different things than severances and minor variances on property decisions. And when you have a tribunal that does but when they're sensitive, when it's money or it's personal or it's legal issues and so on, and things that are decisions in camera, then that decision has to have a reasons given to the people. You can't just come out and give, and then that puts everything into a huge big, which I think we did have that happen in our last problem that came up, bringing this to the forefront. That it then takes something that should be a minor variance and a severance, turning it into something that is way more work and so on. So that if the discussion happens and recorded, anybody can see it in perpetuity on YouTube, then you know the reasoning and you know where everybody stood.
Bang, bang.
Elaine?
Thank you. I just a question, because I've never experienced it. Does the OLT ever go in camera?
If I may, Your Worship, yes, the OLT, as a hearing, normally reserves their decisions in camera.
Okay,
Well,
thank you.
Writes lengthy reasons.
and, here's the irony. The Supreme Court of Canada would never find acceptable our level of detail in terms of reasons. And one of their fundamental decisions is that when a court is making a finding, that there has to be very detailed reasons. You cannot simply go in and sit down and say guilty, and maybe a few other words after that. You have to go through an analysis of the arguments you've heard. You have to go through a systematic process where you describe the process that you went through to come to the conclusion that you did. The Supreme Court would be very, very dissatisfied with the level of that sort of activity at the municipal level. And I think that again, not to diminish the work of the Committee of Adjustment, I think that they probably give sufficient reasons, and the more transparent their process is, the better, in my view.
Well, as I say, I can live with this, but I know at the Conservation Authority level, things are not black and white when you sometimes debate these things. And one of the things you can talk about or debate when you go in camera is the credibility of the witnesses. And I'm going with it. Fine. I'm fine.
Okay.
Your Worship, I'm fine.
So I do have a motion that we receive the Clerk's Report, Committee of Adjustment Rules of Procedure dated March 5th, 2025. And the expectation is that that will go to the committee for their consideration and comment. Now, do they get the final say?
No.
The committee actually has the final say, so they can propose changes to these procedures and bylaws. If they do propose substantive changes, I would bring it back so that council could at least be aware of what those changes were before they're adopted.
Okay. I think we should be made aware of any substantive changes to this. Melinda? No, Ralph?
Well, and I hope that our Committee of Adjustment watches this, or reads the transcript of the debate that we just had.
I'm sure word will reach them. So we have a motion on the floor. Ralph?
Approved.
Any opposition? And the motion is carried. Okay. So I have a motion by Councillor Capes to guide unfinished and new business. Councillor Capes, do you want to set this up before I read the motion? Or would you prefer me to read the motion first?
Whatever you prefer, Your Honor.
Okay. Let me read the motion
Or-
first, and then you
Go ahead.
can elaborate. Whereas the last and most recent Town of Mono Strategic Plan 2019 to 2022 identifies the importance of our natural heritage as evidenced by the many initiatives the town has led and supported, which preserve our valued landscape and lifestyle, and whereas Mono continues to experience growth pressures locally and population targets provincially, and whereas the town of Mono has a growing list of individual unfinished business items that impact our municipality, a place that we love to live in and call home, known as the town of Mono, and whereas Mono has a thoroughly researched and thoughtfully informed detailed report, including recommendations from participating in the International Countryside Stewardship Exchange, and whereas the data, evidence, and recommendations contained in the report are relevant, valuable, and could be utilized as a tool to direct our priorities, investments of council and staff time, and actions for the benefit of the town, its citizens, and for future generations. Therefore, be it resolved that the council allocate time and resources for a dedicated committee of the whole or training session to carefully review the International Countryside Stewardship Exchange Report, Be it further resolved that council and staff use the relevant data and recommendations contained in the report as determined through the process of review to create a framework for council to reference when determining policy priorities, bylaw amendments, and other relevant council decisions, including but not limited to the current list of unfinished business. And Councillor Capes, that's your motion. Do we have a seconder to get it on the floor for debate?
I'll second it.
Councillor Mankelo seconds. Councillor Capes?
Thank you, Councillor Mankelo, and thank you, Mayor, for reading that. What I find is that we have a number of items on the unfinished business list that seem like they could logically be dealt with together. It's a challenge, you know, when we're, like it says, they're individual unfinished business items. And could we consolidate, I'm using that word, to get more traction to make the changes if we had the more consolidated and specifically focused and able to direct staff in an organized, deliberately planned way. And so I read that report. I'm going to show it to you, just in case people haven't seen this. This is the report, and as you can see, I've got stickies on it everywhere because it is valuable. It is where we are rooted as a town. And so I think if we set our unfinished business priorities against a set of principles, if you want, expanded beyond the 3 E's, because we don't seem to refer to those very much lately, and actually have a framework that talks about how we're going to preserve our culture, our heritage in terms of the built environment. And so what does that look like in terms of, you know, the large homes, the secondary suites, the, you know, putting in regulations around B&Bs or verbos or things like that. I just see that maybe it will help us pool those things together, connect them to make a bigger impact for a specific outcome that we want to achieve. Does that make any sense?
Well, I think the first issue that needs to be addressed is making this report that I was very involved in as a host of the committee that came up to Mono from all over North America, making that report generally available so that members of council and the public can read it. I'd commend it to everybody. I think it was an excellent report at the time. I think that when we reread it for the first time since 1996, we will see that much of it has stood the test of time, but it's not online. It's in paper form only. And there's only 3 people in the organization who were here when that was when that process took place, Les Haluka, Kimberly, and myself.
Wow. Okay, my apologies. I have a copy, and I thought it was available to everybody, but it wouldn't take much to have it scanned and made available online to everybody and have the public read it and get even input from the community, you know, about what they see as important in this report. Because it's very detailed. It's got things in there that could help us, I believe.
Yeah. Mike, and then...
So just so we can move forward a little bit, I won't be offended. I sent this out in June to council, and it is on our website. So yeah, so and I have hard copies available at the office. It does. I probably sent it with 1,000 other emails that I send to council. So so it's good. So the public, it is available online, PDF on our website. And it may be step 2 of this to get our heads wrapped around the recommendations inside. So, yeah.
Well, that's embarrassing. Sorry, I don't remember reading it.
Yeah, I'm embarrassed.
I can't imagine that I didn't read it, because when I was reading your motion, it's kind of like, what is she referring to? And then when you held it up, it's 1996. My question is, that's great, 1996, but yeah, is there, like sometimes when you start looking at things that are older and you want to, get up to date with it and everything, and you get all organized, you spend a bunch of time doing it, and then there's a new one that's just come out, and it's like, well, shoot, why did I not get that iPad instead of this one? So is this something that has been updated at all? Because that is a lifetime ago. No.
It hasn't been, but my recollection of the process and the content is that we'd be pleasantly surprised by the tone of the report and some of the objectives of the report. Ironically, the thing that comes to mind immediately was, I remember one of the professors, and I'm not certain whether he was the professor of forestry or whether he was in the economic realm. The question was posed: what should Mono look like in 10? How would you define success in 10 years' time for the town of Mono? And the instantaneous response was, not an inch more paved roads. So, Elaine, and then Ralph.
And to your point, Melinda, yes, of course, it is a 1996 report. It's not something that happens all the time. This was a very special event that took place, as obviously John could attest to because he was involved in it. However, we can look at these things and ask the questions about, in our lens today, what is applicable, what is not. So I think, like there are some very good, interesting things about how we preserve our landscape, and like it's very well worth the read, and I think it would help us guiding our decision making, because it would give us something more concrete than and up-to-date, if we redid it, than what we have now.
Ralph?
Thank you, Elaine. I did try and look this up. I could find information about it, but could not find the report. My understanding of the purpose of your motion, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is in the last paragraph, and that is to create a framework to help us determine council priorities. And this report, I don't know, it sounds like it's more than that, but within this report, I gather there's some framework that we could make use of. Is that the point?
No, there's no framework in the report. I don't want to call it strategic planning, okay, because that gets everybody's hair on the back of their neck standing up. However, it is in defining what is the Mono we wish to have. We know the level of service, what does the landscape look like, how, what are the methods that we're going to use to preserve that landscape. It allows us to say what is really important beyond the 3 E's, and actually then say what are we can take a proactive approach to any bylaw changes, any zoning changes, any policy changes, and we can look at, through that lens of the framework we create, all of the things that come to us and say, does this fit or does it not fit? And where does it fit in terms of what we need to concentrate our efforts on?
Okay, so I think I get your point. And rather than use the 3 E's as the standard that we measure things against, we get another standard, which is, I don't know what you're saying, up to date or something like that. So this gives us a standard of which you can look at any individual item that we would want to do and say, well, against that standard, it's very important or it's not important. And I think that's one of the things that we need to do, and we probably do it already in our own minds. And the other thing we do, of course, is we look at the difficulty of this process, because some of the things that we ask staff to do take a tremendous amount of time and investigation, and others not so much. So I think both aspects are part of our decision-making. One is this is important for Mono, and two, is this a problem for our staff or something they can handle quickly?
If I can, I don't know that the document is going to give us much guidance on some of the nuts and bolts content of the unfinished council business. You know, it obviously has a bearing on other things, but some of the sort of nuts and bolts objectives of the unfinished council business, I don't know that the report is really going to, you know, given the fact it's dated and it is a view of the town at the 30,000-foot level.
Thank you very much. This is a good discussion. So I guess the question then becomes, please, to Mike, if you sent it, I got the email here in June 21st, you sent it, and how have you been using it? Since you sent it to us and all you said was this was interesting, happy reading, how were you thinking that it could be used? Or have you been using it, rather, is the question.
Well, sorry, it's June. The recommendations listed and really highlight our partners, our conservation partners, and our relationships with the environment while trying to weigh the impacts of development. The big, and I do recall what I said. Some of the challenges identified are the reality of today, is what I had said to council, and the biggest challenge that I found, I'm not quoting it verbatim, but was that they identified that the town of Mono will have to balance limited financial input that's derived through development, DCs, new tax base by growth, against protecting the environment because of how the town of Mono geographically sits within the Niagara Escarpment, and that was you know, I think we had just come out of the 2024 budget session where council once again was challenged with the ability to find the balance between increased taxes and reserve contributions, which was highlighted once again this year. So the lack of development, the lack of growth that the town of Mono has, you know, you can say that growth introduces finances into the town's tax coffer, but does it really? Because you have to expend money, and you have to grow to maintain that. But I think what it does do is definitely helps us carry that financial ability along as we increase density on population. So really, what I found to be interesting in here is that it struck the challenge that the town of Mono would have, and the staff is identifying this as reality when we think about environmental protection of our lands with the limited ability to grow, right? So that was really the key highlight. But we continue to work with our partners. I've reached out TRCA. We're working with them, even though it's a limited amount. CVC, MVCA, and NEC as well, right? Like, we continue to work with them. So, but I think it was more the challenges. I think that it was the one with the lack of finances through growth. That was going to be one of Mono's toughest. You know, it would be 2006. But was going to be Mono's toughest challenge is that growth, the amount of environmental protected lands in Mono would be the toughest challenge that Mono would see moving forward. So that was, and quite frankly, I think we're there. We're not seeing a lot of growth, which drives our tax base up, and we're trying to maneuver our funds as best as we can to protect the environment now. So,
I think, and I thank Elaine for putting this on our radar. It gives us something to review, talk about. I don't see the harm in having a committee of the whole devoted to talking about it and maybe picking out a few things that we see as relevant today as they were in the last century. It will govern how we go forward, but I don't know that it impacts the unfinished business list, because everybody's got priorities on that list that as I say, range from philosophical to simply nuts and bolts and more work for the clerk.
Elaine, to clarify, when you say that, we could maybe put some things together, like new site alteration with the large home planning, with the, to put them together, but how would that actually pragmatically make the clerk's job easier, do you think?
Well, I'm not saying it, what it does, it gives, thank you for the question. So what I'm seeing is if we combine some of those things and ask the question against whatever the framework is, does this get us closer to this? Does this help? Maybe we'll get some of them off the list and say, we're not going to do these. I don't know.
Oh,
but,
just...
when we look at, there's a bunch of things like rural outdoor lighting, and I know I'm responsible for that. The Hockley Historic Community, backyard chicken bylaw, short-term rentals, like some of these things, and the large residential homes planning, how do they connect? How do they complement or not complement each other? And could we get more traction if we were to package them together and deal with them all at once so that we had a common principle behind them to say, okay, these naturally grouped because of this, and therefore we are going to make this a priority. So it's not how do we independently define their priority, but how do we define their priority maybe together as meeting one of the framework principles or goals that we establish out of looking at this report. It's a perhaps.
I think the good news is that some of these things are going to come off our list fairly soon. Am I not correct on that? We're on the cusp.
So speaking obviously only for the clerk's department, we are advancing a number of these projects. Noise, firearms, backyard chickens, those are all well in the process. Some of them coming close to termination. Other projects, of course, are a bit bigger, such as ASC and AMPS. And there are several projects on there that I haven't put timelines on because, frankly, they do need more resources to be able to tackle those. I'm fully in favor of council in some method or other establishing and debating their strategic priorities, and then whether that helps decide which ones of these projects are tackled first, and if they're all need to be tackled. Mm-hmm. I recognize, though, that that's a long, complex, and difficult process for council to undertake.
So I don't know what people's views are on doing this committee of the whole or workshop sooner rather than later, but we still have council business to attend to, and not the least of which is knocking a bunch of the items off the unfinished council business list. Did you have any timeline in mind, Elaine?
No, I didn't have a timeline in mind, but I think sooner rather than later is better, because that will give us, I'm hoping, the priorities that we see that we need to focus on. So we've got how much time left on council? And so it would be nice to have that done sooner rather than later, and to be able to put it in front of the public and say, does this fit with your vision of Mono? Does this fit with how you see us? We can talk about that when we have our meeting, but I think it's well worth the investment to walk through this report, page by page. I know that's going to scare y'all. I worked in IT, and we used to do that with code.
First of all, we're going to have to familiarize ourselves or refamiliarize ourselves with the content of the report.
No, we take the report in that workshop. And
No,
go through.
I'm not going to get into a workshop where I haven't read the report.
Oh, no,
no,
I agree. I agree.
Decades. I think
Yes.
we need to read the report, digest it as you have, before we schedule a workshop. And I think we need to get this in a place of prominence on our website so the public can see it as well.
Absolutely, Your Worship. So what we have available is just a scan of this physical document.
That's all we need.
So it is a little rough because you can't even separate the pages, but we do have it, and that's
Okay.
what the CAO emailed council previously.
That's great. That's a start. Okay, Ralph?
I think that the direction you're suggesting, Your Honor, is appropriate. We need to know what we're talking about before we decide whether we'll have a workshop about it. So, Elaine, I really appreciate your interest and effort to try and move along our priorities, our various projects, and establish a better priority and help with the whole process. I have no idea whether this, I accept your opinion, but I have no idea personally whether this report's going to help that at all. So I've got 80 pages to digest, and I think we should do that before we discuss it again.
Okay, so I have a motion on the floor. What's the wish of council?
Could we table it until we've read this report?
That's entirely up to council,
Sounds good.
and it's non-debatable beyond
I
that.
didn't move it.
I know you haven't yet. You haven't yet. You don't have a seconder.
I didn't move it. Okay. I was wondering out loud. Well, I'm just procedurally trying to think how we get over where we are right now, and if we all need some time to read it. The clerk has his hand up.
Yes, Fred?
So in addition to tabling this, council, of course, I shouldn't say council, the mover and seconder can withdraw it, even though the motion's on the floor. It can be withdrawn by the mover or seconder if both Councillor Capes or Mangtalo feel that it's premature to put it to vote. So that's just another option to deferring.
Is there a pro or con to that versus tabling it? Withdrawing versus tabling?
Well, if it's tabled, then it's tabled either to a specific date or indefinitely, but it's still a standing item for council to come back. If it's withdrawn, then this motion has to be reintroduced from scratch.
Elaine, do you have a preference?
I think I would like to have us, if we can, make a decision to just say, yes, we will commit some time to do this. Obviously, the timeline is not specified in the motion, so it's really just, that we commit to having a workshop or a committee of the whole, however we handle that. It's not saying that we have to do it tomorrow or next week or the week after, so we can determine the timeline for that. It's just accepting this in principle, that we think that this is a worthy investment.
I think we need to read it first.
There's a seconder.
Sorry, I can't hear.
Okay. As the seconder now?
As the seconder, Elaine, unfortunately, I can't support that because I think we need to digest the report and then we can decide whether we want to go ahead with the workshop. So I would, I think that the report, that I'll have to withdraw my seconder.
Okay. My suggestion, I think you're getting a commitment here that we are all going to dive into this report one way or the other. And then some probably will want to do a workshop, and maybe some will say, why do we do a workshop? But I think we all are committed to reading the report, and that's the important thing. You've put it on our radar, and whether the motion goes ahead or not, I take some comfort in the fact that you've raised the issue.
Okay, so I don't know, as Fred asked, what's the best thing to do, table, or Ralph asked, what's the best thing to do, table it or withdraw it? I really don't.
If you withdraw it, you can always move it again. If you table it, you can always raise it from the table.
Didn't we just have the seconder withdraw?
And we just had a seconder bail, so short of.
No motion on the floor.
So I would say there's no motion on the floor without
Okay.
a new seconder. But
Okay, so
I think
really-
you've piqued our interest.
Okay, so the motion is withdrawn,
Okay.
and the action is that everyone on council will review the report and we'll come back to it at some other date.
Yeah.
I think you have our, Fred?
So, Your Worship, a withdrawal still is a motion. So while you can't have a motion to withdraw unless it's moved by the mover or seconder, it is still technically a motion. So technically, there would be a motion put on the floor now by Councillor Mantalo to withdraw. It doesn't need to be seconded. It's not debatable. It just needs to be voted on.
Okay. So, Councillor Mantalo.
I so move.
Okay, any further discussion? Any opposed? That motion is carried.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Elaine.
I'll bring it back, don't worry.
I have before we start to discuss Schedule A, I have a motion that we accept Schedule A to this agenda. Moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Melinda. Discussion of items on Schedule A. Melinda?
Thank you very much. I did not give a list earlier because everybody always comes up with stuff that I can comment on. But just now that I understand what we just discussed for 15 minutes, item number 3 is interesting in that not only should the council read the report and understanding, but perhaps also it will be great to have it on which we've decided, have it on our website for our residents to read and understand, and maybe just helpful to everybody.
Right. Anything, Ralph?
Yes, I wanted to bring up the issue of the amalgamation proposal by oral modality. This is amalgamation proposal for NVCA and Simcoe Conservation Authorities. And it's the information that we have is only partial on Schedule A. I did send around this morning, and you may or may not have a chance to read it yet, but the board chair of the NVCA, which is Jonathan Scott, has written to all board members, and he asks us that we would consider having your municipal council receive and endorse the resolution that is in the Schedule A, and appoint yourself or a preferred delegate to vote at a future amalgamation meeting. For clarification, there's no date for the future amalgamation meeting, but what the situation here is that if the board, if the Conservation Authority is to merge, that has to be a decision not of the board, but of the municipalities. Okay, so we have to set up another group, which are representatives of the municipalities, to discuss and vote on this. So we could do that now. I brought this item up twice before. There was never any much discussion about it. I think the last time it was sort of felt that it was just not a good idea. But we should decide if we have a position, and we could do it at this meeting, or we could do it at a future meeting, and then we have to appoint somebody to any one of us to represent the municipality. Is there any questions about that process?
Other than that it's awfully complicated.
Well, actually, amalgamation of two authorities is a pretty big process. Not something to sneeze at.
I thought I already read something to say that it wasn't...
Wasn't fine.
Yeah, I thought it was a fait accompli, not going to happen.
Yeah, it seems to be still alive.
Well, find the silver bullets and the wooden mallets and the stake.
What's that?
It's just a Dracula, getting rid of vampires.
Okay.
So, what are we going to do?
Yeah, so what do you want us to do today, Ralph? I mean, I don't think any of us are in favor of the amalgamation, so
That's my sense, too.
so what do we do?
I think we need...
Ralph,
Sorry, thank you. I think the next step is to agree to that, and if so agreed, then to appoint somebody. It can be a current member of the board like myself or somebody else, represent the municipality at a meeting, which all municipalities will be attending, and will be a meeting to determine NVCA's position on this.
Okay. I'd like to move that the town of Mono is not in favor of amalgamation, and that the town of Mono appoints Ralph Manctillo to represent the town at a meeting of municipalities to consider this issue.
Fred?
So, Deputy Mayor Nix, if I may, I'd like to propose some expanded verbiage on that.
Of course.
Okay. So this is the verbiage that was recommended by the chair of the NVCA.
Oh.
Okay. That Council for the Town of Mono receives and endorses the correspondence from NVCA opposing an amalgamation with Lake Simcoe Regional Conservation Authority. Given no expert analysis has been presented to support such a proposal to move away from watershed-based conservation authorities, and that Council for the Town of Mono appoint, and Deputy Mayor Nix, you suggested Councillor Manctillo?
Yes.
Appoint Ralph Manctillo to vote in opposition at the forthcoming meeting called to consider the amalgamation proposal.
I so move. Your wording was there.
Melinda?
Thank you. I read the letter this morning that you forwarded, and I just heard what you said, and I don't know. I mean, the meeting today says, receive and endorse the report, but then it goes on to say that because there hasn't been any expert advice given, we're going to appoint you to definitely vote in opposition. I don't think that we should do that. I think that in principle at the moment, with the information that we have, it doesn't make any sense. But if you're saying that it doesn't make any sense because we don't actually have all the information yet, then we should be moving to, let's get more information before we make a decision. I don't think it's right to have a motion that automatically says we're going to vote a certain way.
I think the important thing is we appoint Ralph, and that Ralph takes the will of this council to that meeting.
No, can I respectfully disagree? The principle behind the conservation authorities, and it's not always followed, but we are watershed based. So the Nottawasaga Conservation Authority looks at all the water that flows into the Nottawasaga River. Lake Simcoe looks at, and there's a special act, a federal act on the clean Lake Simcoe water. I mean, they have their own mandate, they have their own watershed. So I think it's very easy for us as a council to say, we continue with that model. That's what we want to continue with. Therefore, we oppose.
Ralph can articulate that at the meeting.
Yeah, I agree that's...
The motion articulates that right now.
But the motion says that he definitely will... Yeah, I don't know. I can't... I can't...
I've moved the motion. I don't have a seconder. Is there a seconder to that motion?
Well, can we friendly amend it to not have that part? You change the verbiage.
Yes, Elaine?
Seconding.
Are you seconding?
I need some clarification because I didn't hear that that motion said specifically anything about we support maintaining the current structure organized by watershed.
Fred?
So the motion as read is that Council for the Town of Mono receives and endorses the correspondence from NVCA opposing an amalgamation with Lake Simcoe Regional Conservation Authority, given no expert analysis has been presented to support such a proposal to move away from watershed-based conservation authorities.
So she seconded it?
Are you seconding
Yeah,
that?
thank you. Yes, I will second
Yeah.
that.
There's a moved and seconded motion on the floor.
Okay, and I'm tempted to move a friendly amendment to say that it's a dumb idea.
It might be helpful to have some background, as I understand it. Oro Medonti brought this up as an issue primarily because, as they stated, there may be more to it, probably is, but they stated that this is a problem for them to deal with two different conservation authorities. And we sort of said, well, scratch our head because we're dealing with three. So I'm not sure, nobody really understands it beyond that. With respond to your comments, I don't think it's saying that we should have an expert opinion. It's just saying that the background is there's no expert opinion suggesting this. So the other way of saying it would be that we don't have any relevant reason for doing this at the moment. So given what information we have, we don't support it.
And I completely agree. I don't support it. I completely agree. I'm just saying that as a principle, we know that there is no vote. We know that there's no date for any vote. And we're making a motion to say that you're going to vote a certain way. And so I think that extra part is not, because who knows what might happen with more information, and now we've got it written down that you're going to vote a certain way. Versus saying, just leaving it, that we receive the report, we endorse your report or your letter, and we oppose it, and we appoint Ralph, and leave it at that. Why do we need to say how you're going to vote? You're obviously going to vote how the council you're represented, because there may be more information. This vote may not be for 3 years. Why do we need to add that extra bit? But it doesn't matter because it's going to go ahead. Everybody's in agreement. I'm just being picky-uni.
I think that's a good point.
Thank you.
They do need to know if the town of Mono supports it, and there may be more information that come out to make me rethink it. So I'm happy with that. I think that there's two asks here. One is for NVCA to know what the position of the town is currently, and two is to have one of the members of our council take part in a vote, which will not be 3 years. It might be, I think it's going to be probably in a month or two.
Right.
So as I understand it, all you're suggesting is the motion as read by the clerk, but just take out the phrase, in appointing you, you will vote against, yeah, just take, is that what you're suggesting?
And appoint you, just leave it as and we will appoint.
So we just appoint Ralph. Is that, I'll ask my seconder, is that a friendly amendment? I'll consider that a friendly amendment. Elaine?
You do consider that a friendly amendment?
Yeah, reasonably friendly.
Okay, if we don't need to tell them how our
he's gonna
members can vote, then I'm okay with that.
So, Fred, can you change the wording on?
Yeah, so what I suggest then is in the second phrase, we just strike out the words "in opposition." So it would read, and that Council for the Town of Mono appoint Ralph Mangtalo to vote at a forthcoming meeting called to consider the amalgamation proposal.
We all agreed on that?
Yes.
Call the question. Any opposed? Motion is carried as amended.
That's all I have.
Okay. How about you, Fred?
Nothing.
Okay, I don't have anything. Other than, I sort of do. The Township of Amaranth Resolution Crime Stoppers Program funding. I'd like to generally support that. There's a lot of money around that could go towards the good work that they undertake. And the organization, quite frankly, is threatened locally in terms of continuing that good work. And I'd like to, just a simple motion in support of the Amaranth motion.
I'll second that.
So, council, how about this for consideration? Be it resolved that council for the town of Mono supports the resolution passed by the Township of Amaranth and likewise requests the province of Ontario to assist with financial support for the Crime Stoppers program.
Very good.
I like it, thank you. Do I have a seconder on that? Deputy Mayor Nix seconds. Any opposition? Motion's carried. Elaine, do you have anything on the list?
Thank you. I would like to talk about number 13. I thought that that was banned everywhere outright, not in Canada. Is that not true?
Well, the Criminal Code of Canada does have a section on hate speech. And depending on how you interpret it, it could mean to say that a symbol that evokes hate speech is hate speech. But I don't know that it is explicitly banned, but it certainly doesn't bring up warm and fuzzy memories or thoughts. And maybe the authorities should look at the provisions of the criminal code for hate speech a little more aggressively to encompass the symbols of hate speech.
Okay, I would support a motion in that direction.
Well, it's a bit complicated to sort of write that up. They're asking that it, quote, be banned, whereas I'm suggesting that the prosecutorial authorities be a little more creative. I don't know how we do that in a simple motion. Fred, do you have any ideas? You know where to start?
If council's looking for a resolution, short of a resolution similar to what council sees on their agenda, asking for legislation to be passed, banning symbols and iconography, anything more than that, I agree, Your Worship, it would be ill-advised to try to do that on the fly.
Okay. Let me make some inquiries, and I'll get back to council if there's an easy way to do this.
Can we at a minimum support this motion? Or is that not desirable?
Well, yeah, the problem is that there'll be others out there who want other symbols banned because they find them offensive. I don't know where you begin and end. I'd leave it alone, and I'm curious as to the motivation for this.
Okay. All right, so I like the direction that you might take us in, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Reports of members of council. I'm going to start with Fred this time.
Just a couple of things on the fly. I sit on the Headwater Streams Committee, and as in such a position, I've been appointed, not necessarily willingly, to a advisory committee for the management plan for Glenhoe conservation area. I hope you all find that thrilling, and if anyone would like to take my position, I'd gladly give it to them.
You're the person for the job.
The only other thing I have to report, this isn't council business, but I'll tell you anyway. I sit on the Oh, I'm not allowed to say the Biodiversity Committee of the Callan Hills Bruce Trail Club. I'm not allowed to say that, am I? All right, I sit on a committee that looks at biodiversity in our area, and I've made contact with the Renfrew Conservation Authority and joined their butternut recovery program, and I'm hoping in the spring of 2026, they've promised to get some, maybe a couple of dozen butternut trees. They gather the nuts and some cuttings, they test them for DNA to make sure that they're genetically pure butternuts, and then they grow them, and then they will give them to you for free, and I'm hopefully going to get a couple of dozen. Now this, I just want to warn you, it's an experiment. They do not know that butternut trees that grow in eastern Ontario are necessarily suitable for this area, but they've already given Dufferin Forest 30 such trees, which they planted last year. They all survived the summer, so I've sort of joined that program, and I hope to be bringing a couple of dozen butternut trees here in the spring of 2026, assuming I'm still alive.
Okay, I have nothing to report.
Did you go to the OPP? Did you go to?
Oh, yes. Yes, the Police Services Board did meet, and Fred and myself were there. Not a whole lot to report. We went through some crime statistics. There's good news and bad news, but actually some fairly good news in terms of incidents being in the decline. Our newly appointed member of the Police Services Board was there. Got into quite an interesting discussion about the role of the police in education, maybe re-engaging with the schools in some form or another. I undertook to find out from the local judiciary whether there is a high school program that I was involved in where a judge, a justice, a Crown attorney, a defense attorney would go into classrooms and talk about the judicial process. And it was very successful for many years, but many of the people involved in it have retired. So I don't know whether that's going on, but we sort of identified that as a thing that we could maybe resurrect in one form or another.
We had a recent Board of Health meeting, and I'd just like to bring you up to date on some of the information about a couple of things. Infectious diseases was one of the topics which was highlighted, and so there are three infectious diseases I'd like to comment about. One is TB, the other is measles, and the other is bird flu. On TB, there's an increasing incidence of TB in our district and in Ontario. It's felt that this is largely due to immigration. And the types of TB that are present, there's two types. There's latent TB and there's active TB. So latent TB is when you have a skin test which was done for some purpose. Perhaps it was for immigration, or you've been working in an infected area, and the skin test is positive and you have no symptoms at all. The incidence of those is staying about the same. Sometimes they're treated, by the way, and sometimes they're not. But the incidence of active TB means you are, in our area, it's mostly respiratory, and it means you have an active cough or sputum, which is positive, and you are potentially can be infectious to other people. So that's up a fair bit. Whether it's just a little blip this 1 year or not remains to be seen. The second disease is measles, and you all heard about measles. Measles is caused by a virus. Normally you get your measles vaccine starting when you're 1, and so that infants before the age of 1 are quite susceptible to it. Measles is occasionally fatal, and occasionally the infected person is hospitalized. It's not a good disease to get. And occasionally, I've had personal experience with a family member who did get measles and ended up with severe respiratory problems, breakdown of their lungs, and a lifelong pulmonary disability. So that's number 2. And the third one is H5N1. That's the current bird flu influenza. And this is This is moving moderately fast. We haven't reached a peak yet, according to the epidemiologist. It's coming up from the States. This is a flu which is caused by a virus which is mainly passed from bird to bird and usually from native birds to poultry. It is also a problem with dairy herds, and there have been almost 1,000 dairy herds in the United States that have been infected with this. It's probably fatal for poultry, and there have been millions of chickens which have died from this in the United States. It can be passed to humans. It can be passed to other animals such as cats. It's fatal for cats usually. For dogs, it's not. The problem has reached Ontario and has reached our particular health district. So the concerns is managing the spread, and unfortunately, flocks which are free-range flocks are susceptible to this because of contamination from native birds. So the move towards, in some areas, to organic farming is a problem because organic farm birds have to be free-range, so they're going to be much more susceptible to this. So we're just in a stage where it's starting to involve people in a very small way, and it's something we need to keep our eye on. That's all.
The third one, did I not hear that the federal government bought or has acquired, I don't know what it was, 500,000 vaccines for the bird flu? And do you know where is that, what I didn't understand, are those vaccines for chickens or humans?
Just heard that as well, Brett, and I'm just assuming, but I don't know who they're for. I think they're for humans working in the poultry business. So most of the human infections in the States have been poultry workers, and some have been in dairy herds. So these people are in contact with animals which are infectious, despite a very high level of biosecurity, usually. And they're susceptible to the infections. So I think it's an issue because it's a fairly contagious virus, and the wild birds which are flying around, the virus is carried in the air and also a contact virus, so that if you have eggs from a hatchery which is infected, they could be, the surface of the eggs could be contaminated. However, most chickens, they die or they stop laying eggs before they die. And so that's one of the clues to a chicken farmer that things are not going well before the chicken shows signs which are respiratory. One of the clues is they're not laying eggs well. But you can get infected from handling the poultry or a wild bird. And it's a virus that's easily taken off by cleaning your hands or washing your hands, etc. So it is an issue. I think it's going to become more of an issue. It also mutates. So the mutation usually occurs when it goes from one species to another. In other words, it goes from a chicken to a cat, and the cat gets sick, and that's the mutation. The mutation may be more infectious. So we've got H1N, H5N1 is the main mutation. The main, I guess it's DNA type. And there's also H5N2, and they're present in BC, Newfoundland, Labrador, and to a small extent in Ontario.
Well, yeah, there's been a couple of deaths, right? Deaths of measles and deaths of the bird flu. So it's not to be taken lightly. Thank you. Yeah, no, definitely in the States so far. Definitely so far there. My report, so there was some weather that made it so that we weren't able to have the euchre. So it got postponed. So if February wasn't good for you, March 21st is going to be our rescheduled euchre night, and there's some space in that. We also didn't talk about with respect to RAC and things to do, we also didn't mention the bowl for kids' sake, which Kim had brought up at our last council meeting, and there was a document in Schedule A about it, and there is she's made a team, for if anybody wants to go bowl on the staff and stuff, there's a team, right?
Yes, we saw.
And then harping back on the fire services, I had been remiss last week, our last meeting, to not mention in follow-up to Chief Pratt's comment to the mayor's question with respect to wildfires that are a concern, and as we're coming into a new season where hopefully all of this wet snow will go away and then we will be a little drier, they had commented that they were going to get some training. And then it was brought to my attention that in actual fact, Rosemont already has certified wildland fighters. It's already been on Chief BYLAWS' radar. They got their training last year, and they're the first ones in the area to get certification. And so when the Shelburne District Fire Board or Fire Service will be having some training done, it will be done by the Rosemont firefighters. So they already are all working cooperatively, and so, because that is a concern here where we live in this woods. And that's it for me.
Okay.
Elaine, sorry.
Thank you, Melinda, for bringing that up. And we also have a truck that has a special apparatus to put out grass fires, bush fires, things like that. So that's something we know. I was at the Heritage meeting last night for a brief period. And you know what's going on with Heritage, and they have great motions coming forward. And I do have a question about that, but I'll go to Fred later. DEI, we are supposed to have a meeting if there's quorum. It seems that things are coming up for people, and the list of people who can attend is shrinking. One thing I did want to mention is the Westminster Church in Orangeville is hosting another free community meal. It's a brunch, and it is on March 15th from 11 until 1, and it's open to everybody to attend and everybody who wants to volunteer. So I put that out there. Westminster Church in Orangeville. Free community brunch, March 15th. And that's it.
Thank you. My apologies. Michael?
Thanks, Your Worship. Not much to report as I was off last week. Got a pamphlet in the mail from MVCA. They've launched their e-permitting program, which should make things more convenient digitally. They are also redoing their draft. They have their draft regulation mapping is on their website right now. They have an open house scheduled for April 1st, 2025 at the Tiffin Center for 5:30 p.m. should you wish to attend, or you can email planning@mvca.on.ca to schedule an appointment. So that's if your property is in or near a watercourse, river, stream, pond, wetland, steep slope, floodplain, or the Georgian Bay shoreline. You should be aware that the permitting regulation lines could be changing in and or around your property. So that's that will be available at the front counter, and I'll see if Andrew can find a link to put that information on our webpage. My regulation changed at my house, so that's why I brought it. I think it's important to review the 2020, 2019 more. So, yeah.
Fred?
I have nothing, Your Worship.
Okay. Matt?
Thank you. So load restrictions were applied to all town roads March 1st, with exception of Coles subdivision and second line between French Drive and Highway 9. 5 side road resurfacing tender was released yesterday. It closes on March 28th. Bridge 5 tender will be released in hopefully the next week or two. The town, after the cybersecurity issues with the town of Orangeville, I had sent an email to council regarding that. We've, so annual reports for the water systems were due by the 28th of February. There was a delay. It was a request for extension to the ministry. The ministry accepted the extension. We've since received those reports as of yesterday. I'm waiting for the summary reports, and both the annual and summary reports for both drinking water systems will be brought to council hopefully at the March 25th meeting. High lift pump upgrades at the Cardinal Woods Pump House have been completed. So that's a long time coming, and the water conservation notifications have all been lifted.
Sorry, have you taken the signs down?
Yes, we've taken the content down. The physical signs are embedded in snowbanks. The website's been updated.
We'll get them out in May.
And yeah, so we're back to.
Okay. Les?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the heels of the CIO's comment about the NVCA e-permitting, I met with the group that Amaranth is using for their building department. They're called, virtually that is, they're called RSM Building Services. They use a software called Cloud Permit. It's open to everyone, but that's the software that they like to use. I'm hoping to get a proposal from them for next council's meeting, and then follow up with a memo as to the best direction. It's not, I mean, they will have a costing that they will basically issue the permits and collect fees and that, but to implement, there's going to be some sort of costing on our end. But I don't know that until I get their proposal. And then I guess the CEO also took a little bit of my thunder away. We are working on the rate study for water and wastewater. Originally, we were supplying them information regarding usage, consumption, number of users and that. We met with them last week, and then we just received a preliminary report to review, and we'll meet with them again this week. And we're on schedule to meet in the May, early June deadline. That's my report.
Okay. Thank you. So that brings us to notices of motion. Any notices of motion? Seeing none. In-camera items? Seeing none. I have a motion that we introduce and give the necessary readings to a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of Council of the Town of Mono in Session 5-2025 held on the 11th of March 2025, that it be signed by the Mayor and Clerk, sealed and engrossed in the bylaw book. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Capes moves, seconded by Deputy Mayor. Any opposition? And I have a motion. We're actually going to be under by 1 minute. We adjourn this meeting at 11:59. Mover, Councillor Davey, seconded by Councillor Capes. Any opposition? Seeing none, motion passes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.